Ever hit submit on your online payroll or, watched your data seamlessly sync across devices in the cloud and wondered, who's making sure all that digital magic actually works? And maybe more importantly, that it's secure.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's definitely not just happening by chance.
Right. There's this huge, intricate ecosystem of trust operating behind the scenes. So today, we're diving deep into the invisible assurances that really underpin so much of our interconnected digital world. System and organization controls, or SOC engagements and reports. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Auditing jargon, right?
Yeah.
But stick with us, because honestly, this isn't just for the finance folks or the auditors. This is about understanding the bedrock of digital trust. It affects everything from your paycheck to where your most sensitive data lives.
Exactly.
Our mission today is really to demystify these powerful, often unseen reports and show you why they're just absolutely vital in the world we live in now, where so much is outsourced.
And that's precisely it. We're really talking about the foundational elements here. Trust, accountability, in today's incredibly complex business environment. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Almost every organization, from the tiniest startup to the biggest multinational, they're all leveraging external services for really critical functions.
Totally.
Whether it's their IT infrastructure, maybe human resources, or how they process customer payments. Very few companies do absolutely everything in-house anymore. It's just not feasible for most.
Right.
And these SOC reports, well, they are the essential mechanisms that allow you to have confidence in those external partners. So our goal is to cut through any perceived complexity, give you the core insights, and really help you grasp why these reports are so crucial for anyone relying on outsourced services, which, let's be honest,
It's pretty much everyone, right?
exactly, practically all of us in one way or another.
Okay, so let's kick things off with the fundamental concept that makes SOC reports not just, useful, but absolutely necessary: outsourcing.
Right, the starting point.
In essence, it's pretty simple, really. When one organization, let's call it the user entity, that could be you or your company, decides to bring in another external organization to handle specific services or business operations, well, that external provider is known as the service organization.
User entity uses a service organization.
Exactly. It's kind of a symbiotic relationship, a bit like bringing in a highly specialized team or partner. The user entity leverages the service organization's unique expertise, maybe their specialized staff, their equipment, their technology, to manage tasks. The user entity either, prefers not to handle internally, or maybe just can't handle as efficiently or securely.
You're basically bringing in dedicated experts for a critical job.
Precisely.
And to make this really concrete, let's look at some real-world examples, because once you start thinking about it, you realize just how embedded these service organizations are in our daily lives and, well, in the whole global economy.
Okay, yeah, give us some examples.
Well, first, think about outsourced payroll processors. These are the companies making sure you actually get paid on time.
Right. The important stuff.
The very important stuff, making sure taxes are withheld correctly, pay stubs are accurate. Without them, every single company would need a whole department just navigating complex payroll rules and calculations.
Which would be a huge burden, especially for smaller businesses.
A massive burden. Then, maybe even more impactful today, are the cloud service providers.
Oh yeah, the big ones.
Absolutely. This is literally where your data lives, where your applications run, where vast amounts of digital storage reside. Think AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud. These are massive service organizations. They underpin huge swaths of the internet and corporate IT. Everything from your streaming service to your company's core operations probably runs on one of them.
It's hard to imagine the internet without them now.
It really is. Then you've got credit card processing organizations. Every single time you swipe your card, physically or online, there's this complex background infrastructure.
The magic behind the tap.
Exactly. Routing that payment from your bank through networks to the retailer. These organizations handle that digital magic, making sure your money moves securely and hopefully instantly.
Okay. What else?
Well, we also see a lot of enterprise IT outsourcing services. These are often the unsung heroes managing complex IT systems for large companies. They might handle data centers, network infrastructure, application systems. allowing the user entity, their client, to focus on its main business.
Right, letting them concentrate on what they do best.
Precisely.
Right.
And in finance, financial technology or fintech services are huge. All those seamless digital transactions we kind of take for granted now, loan servicing, payment processing, managing digital assets through apps, that's often fintech service providers.
Mhm.
And finally, even customer support is often outsourced. The folks who help you when things go wrong, online chat, phone support, provided for user entities like airlines or software companies.
Okay, wow, so it really is everywhere.
It is. These examples, I think, really drive home the sheer breadth and depth of services being outsourced today. I mean, from the moment you check your banking app in the morning to buying something online or even just getting your paycheck, there's a very high chance multiple service organizations are playing critical, often invisible roles.
Yeah.
And it's precisely because these external partners are so critical, so deeply woven into the fabric of businesses, that their reliability and their control environment become absolutely paramount.
You're basically trusting them with a piece of your business, sometimes a really crucial piece.
That's exactly it. You are.
So that leads perfectly into the why of SOC reports.
Right.
If a big chunk of a company's operations, or maybe just critical support functions, are handled by someone else, how do they, or importantly, their business partners, like their external financial auditors, how do they get assurance that everything's being done correctly, securely, by the book?
Right. How do you trust but verify?
Exactly. And this is precisely why SOC reports exist. They provide crucial, independently verified information about the design, operation, and effectiveness of controls within that service organization system. It's fundamentally about managing risk. It's about building trust in these, frankly, increasingly complex supply chains of services. Think of it like this. If you're hiring a contractor for a critical part of your house, let's say, rewiring the whole place.
Okay. Important job.
Very important. You wouldn't just take their word for it that they know what they're doing, would you? You'd want maybe some references, maybe a detailed inspection report afterwards, some kind of third-party assurance that their processes are sound, their work will hold up, and they've got the safeguards in place.
Yeah, you want proof they did it right and safely.
Exactly. SOC reports provide that same kind of in-depth third-party assurance, but for digital and operational processes.
And that critical third party is the service auditor. This isn't just, someone working for the service organization checking their own homework. A SOC examination is performed by an independent certified public accountant, a CPA, who specializes in these kinds of engagements.
Okay, so an independent expert.
Yes. And they conduct the examination strictly following what we call attestation standards. These are issued by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, the AICPA. Think of them as the strict rules and guidelines auditors have to follow to make sure their review is thorough, unbiased, and reliable.
And that independence is key, I assume.
Absolutely crucial. It adds this powerful layer of credibility and objectivity to the report. It ensures the findings are unbiased and can be reliably used by the user entities, by their auditors, to assess the risks that come with outsourcing. It's this independent verification that really builds that chain of trust between everyone involved.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit further then. You mentioned SOC reports. Are there different kinds?
Yes, absolutely. There are three main players, let's say, in the SOC world, and each one serves a distinct purpose and is really designed for a specific audience. Understanding these differences is pretty key to figuring out which report gives you the specific information you actually need.
All right, let's decode them. What's the first one?
Let's start with SOC1 for service organizations. Internal control over financial reporting. This is maybe the most, let's say, traditional type.
Okay, SOC 1, financial reporting. Sounds like accounting stuff.
It is definitely focused there. Its specific focus is on the controls at a service organization that are likely to be relevant to a user entity's internal control over financial reporting.
So if the service they provide touches the user's financial statements.
Exactly. If a service organization is processing transactions, say, handling data that directly impacts the financial statements of its users, think payroll processing again, or maybe a payment processor, then a SOC1 report is what those user entities, and especially their financial statement auditors, will need. Think of SOC1 like a financial X-ray. It helps ensure that when you outsource something financial, you're not unknowingly building errors or risks directly into your own company's financial statements. It's about protecting your bottom line from those hidden vendor risks.
Got it. Who gets to see this report? Is it public?
Ah, good question. No, a critical detail here is its restricted audience. SOC1 reports are not for the general public. They're not even really for potential new customers trying to evaluate the service.
Okay.
They are strictly limited to the management of the service organization itself, the user entities who are already using that service organization system, and crucially, the independent auditors of those user entities.
Right, the financial auditors needing that info. Why the restriction?
Because control weaknesses at the service organization could directly and sometimes significantly impact the financial reporting of the user entity. Imagine if an outsourced payroll processor has weak controls over how they calculate wages or taxes.
That could lead to big errors on the user company's books.
Exactly. Material misstatements in their financial records. The SOC1 report helps the user entity's own auditor understand and evaluate that specific risk related to financial reporting.
Okay, so SOC1 is financially focused, restricted audience. What's next?
Next up is SOC2 for service organizations, Trust Services Criteria.
Okay, SOC2, Trust Services Criteria. This sounds broader.
It really is, and here's where it gets really interesting, especially in our digital age. Unlike SOC1, which zooms in purely on financial reporting impacts, SOC2 focuses on the security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, or privacy of a system.
Wow, okay. That covers a lot more ground. Security, availability.
Right. These are what the AICPA calls its 5 trust services categories or criteria. So if you're concerned about, say, data breaches, system downtime, inaccurate data processing, sensitive information getting into the wrong hands, or maybe how your personal data is being handled, a SOC2 report is what you'd be looking for. It goes way beyond just the financial numbers.
That sounds incredibly relevant for almost any cloud service or SaaS provider then.
Absolutely. It's become very, very common. Now, the intended use of a SOC2 report is also quite specific. It's generally for specified parties, usually user entities, business partners, maybe regulators, who are expected to have a pretty good understanding of the service organization and its systems.
Okay, so not just anyone off the street. Why is that?
Well, it's because a SOC2 report contains very detailed, often sensitive information about the service organization's specific controls, their tests, the results. To properly interpret such a detailed report, these specified parties need some context. They need a solid grasp of how the service works, how it connects to their own operations, maybe how other parties fit into the control picture.
Right, because without that context, the details might not make sense or could even be misleading.
Precisely. You need that background knowledge to really understand the implications of the findings. That's why it's usually shared under a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA, and isn't just posted publicly.
Okay, that makes sense. So SOC1 for financial controls, SOC2 for broader system controls based on trust criteria, but both kind of restricted. What if you just want general assurance, like as a potential customer?
Excellent question. That brings us to SOC3 for service organizations, Trust Services Criteria for General Use Report.
SOC3. Okay, general use. That sounds promising.
It is. A SOC3 report is specifically designed to address that need for the general public or for potential clients who want assurance about those trust services criteria but don't have or maybe don't need that deep technical background required for a full SOC2 report.
So it covers the same areas as SOC2, security, availability, etc.
Yes, it's similar in scope to SOC2, meaning it also focuses on those same trust services criteria, security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, or privacy. However, it's drastically different in its reporting style and the level of detail provided.
How so? What's different?
The key differences lie in what's not included in a SOC3 report that is in a SOC2. A SOC3 report does not contain that detailed description of the system or its specific controls. And importantly, it does not include the detailed description of the service auditor's tests of controls and their specific results.
Okay. So it's more of a summary.
Exactly. Think of it this way. If a SOC2 is like the full, detailed engineering blueprint of a building showing every beam, pipe, and wire,
Yeah.
the SOC3 is more like the executive summary or maybe the building inspector certificate saying, yes, this building is safe and structurally sound, but without giving you all the technical drawings.
Gotcha. High-level assurance.
Precisely. It's designed for general users who need that assurance about the controls, but lack the detailed knowledge required to properly interpret a comprehensive SOC2 report. This makes it a really useful tool, often used for marketing, for service organizations to demonstrate their commitment to security and reliability to a broader audience, without revealing proprietary or highly sensitive control details. You'll often find SOC3 reports publicly available on a company's website.
Okay, that clarifies the main three. Are there any others worth mentioning quickly?
Yeah, it's good to know the SOC framework isn't static, it evolves. For instance, there's now a SOC for cybersecurity engagement. This isn't just about one system. It looks at an organization's entire cybersecurity risk management program and the effectiveness of controls within that program. Super relevant today.
Definitely.
And with global supply chains being so complex, there's also a SOC for supply chain engagement. This provides assurance over controls related to an entity's systems used to produce, manufacture, or distribute products.
Wow.
So it really shows how flexible and vital the SOC framework is in addressing specialized emerging risks that go beyond just traditional financial reporting or even general system controls. It's quite adaptable.
Okay, so we have SOC1, SOC2, SOC3, each for different purposes. But I think you mentioned there's another layer to this, something about Type 1 and Type 2.
Yes, exactly. Beyond just the SOC 1, 2, or 3 category, there's another crucial distinction that determines the depth and really the type of assurance you're getting. And that's whether it's a Type 1 or a Type 2 report.
Type 1 versus Type 2. Okay.
Think of it like this. One is like a photograph capturing a specific moment in time.
A snapshot.
A snapshot, precisely. While the other is more like a video showing performance continuously over a period. It's a really fundamental difference in how we verify trust.
Okay, snapshot versus video. I like that analogy. Let's break down Type 1 first, the snapshot.
Right. So, a Type 1 report focuses on two main things. First is management's description of the service organization's system fairly presented. And second, are the controls included in that description suitably designed to achieve the related control objectives?
Designed. Okay.
And here's the absolute key for Type 1. It assesses this as of a specified date, a single point in time.
Right. The snapshot.
Exactly. So the report essentially says, yes, based on our review, at this exact moment in time, their system description seems fair, and their controls appear to be designed properly to meet their objectives. It's about the theoretical effectiveness of the design at that instant. It tells you if they built it right on paper at that moment.
Okay, so it tells you the design looks good then, but not necessarily if it's actually working.
Precisely. It doesn't test whether the controls operated effectively over any period. That's where Type 2 comes in.
Okay, so Type 2 is the video. Tell us about that.
Right. Type 2 reports go a significant step further. They cover the same ground as Type 1, the fairness of the presentation of management's description, and the suitability of the control design. But, crucially, they also assess the operating effectiveness of those controls. Did they actually work as intended?
The key difference. Operating effectiveness.
Yes. And instead of, as of a specified date, a Type 2 report assesses this throughout a specified period.
The video recording.
Exactly. It asks, did they design a good system? And did that system actually work consistently and effectively over a period of time? Usually that period is 6 months, sometimes 12 months.
So that provides much stronger assurance, I'd imagine.
Much stronger.
Yeah.
Because it confirms the controls weren't just well designed on paper, but they were actually functioning as intended over that review period. A Type 2 report isn't just saying the design looks good, it's a performance review. It says, yes, they designed it well, and we performed tests and found evidence that it worked effectively for the last 6 months. For ongoing trust, that's really the gold standard.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, which reports can be Type 1 or Type 2? Does it apply to all SOC types?
Good question. SOC 1 and SOC 2 reports can be issued as either Type 1 or Type 2.
Okay.
The choice really depends on the specific needs of the user entity. For instance, a user might ask for a Type 1 report if they're just starting with a service organization, or maybe evaluating a brand new system. They just want initial assurance that the design looks sound before they commit fully.
Right, a starting point.
But for ongoing assurance, they'll almost always want a Type 2. Now, a SOC 3 report, that one is always issued as a Type 2 report.
Always Type 2 for SOC 3. Why is that?
Well, think about its audience. SOC 3 is for general users who need that high-level assurance. They're typically looking for comfort that the controls are actually working consistently over time, not just that they were well designed on a particular day.
Yeah, you want to know the building is safe, not just that the blueprints looked good.
Exactly. You want assurance of ongoing operational effectiveness for a general use report.
Okay, let's try and make this really concrete with an example. You mentioned Wyatt Co. and Database Inc. earlier.
Yeah.
How would this Type 1, Type 2 thing play out there?
Right, good idea. So Wyatt Co. is a financial advising company. They use Database Inc., a third-party service provider, to process sales contracts and store sensitive client information.
Okay, critical functions outsourced.
Very critical. Now, Wyatt Co.'s own financial auditors are definitely going to be interested in making sure the controls at Database Inc. are not just designed well, but are also operating effectively. Why? Because any control problems at Database Inc. could directly mess up Wyatt Co's financials or, maybe even worse, compromise their client data.
High stakes. So what do?
They obtain a SOC 1 Type 2 report from Database Inc.
Type 2. Okay.
That Type 2 report gives them the comfort they need. It provides assurance that not only were the relevant controls at Database Inc. designed appropriately, but also that those controls were tested by the service auditor and found to be operating effectively over, say, the last 6 months.
So it covers that whole period, giving them confidence for their own audit.
Exactly. It really drives home the practical application the Type 2 report provides, that verifiable evidence needed to trust and outsource services performance over a sustained period.
Got it. And what's actually in these reports? Like, what sections would you typically find in a Type 1 versus a Type 2?
Good question. The core components are pretty consistent, especially between SOC 1 and SOC 2 reports, but with that crucial difference around operating effectiveness. For a Type 1 report, you'll typically find management's description of the service organization's system. What is it? What does it do? Then, a written assertion from the service organization's management. This basically says, yes, as of this specific date, our description is fair and our controls were suitably designed. And finally, the service auditor's report, which expresses an opinion on those management assertions. Did the auditor agree?
Okay, description, assertion on design, auditor opinion on design. What about Type 2?
A Type 2 report includes all of that, but with those critical additions related to operation. That's how you get management's description of the system, often covering the period. Management's written assertion, but this time it states that throughout a specified period, the description was fair, the controls were suitably designed, and the controls operated effectively. And the service auditor's report for a Type 2 also includes an opinion on that operating effectiveness. And here's the really key part for users. It includes a detailed description of the tests of controls performed by the service auditor and the results of those tests.
Ah, so you actually see what they tested and what they found.
Exactly. That's the critical distinction. It provides the evidence of the control's performance over time, not just an opinion on their design at one moment. As one of the key takeaways from our source material puts it concisely, a Type 1 report covers the system design as of a given point in time, whereas a Type 2 report covers both the design and operating effectiveness over a period of time.
Snapshot versus video, design versus design and operation. Got it. That really clarifies the main purposes and who uses which report and why. Okay, so we've talked about SOC 1, 2, and 3, and Type 1 versus Type 2. You mentioned for SOC 2 and SOC 3, they're based on these trust services criteria. Let's shift focus there. What exactly are these criteria?
Right. The trust services criteria, these are really the heart and soul of SOC 2 and SOC 3 engagements. You can think of them as the fundamental blueprints for building and evaluating trust in outsourced services, particularly around systems and data.
Blueprints for trust. I like that. Who came up with them?
They were meticulously established and are maintained by the AICPA's Assurance Services Executive Committee, or ACC. They created them to provide a common language, a shared set of benchmarks for evaluating the controls over information and systems.
So everyone's measuring against the same standard.
Essentially, yes. These criteria address the inherent risks that organizations face in meeting their objectives related to information and systems. They set forth the specific outcomes an entity's control should achieve to mitigate those risks.
Okay. And you mentioned there were 5 of them. Something about CAPPS.
That's right. There are 5 core categories, and thankfully there's a handy mnemonic to remember them. CAPPS.
CAPPS. Okay, let's break that down. What does the C stand for?
C is for confidentiality. This means that information designated as confidential, maybe sensitive customer lists, proprietary formulas, internal strategic plans, is protected to meet the entity's objectives. It's about ensuring secrets stay secret and are protected from unauthorized disclosure.
Got it. Confidentiality. What's A?
A is for availability. This category ensures that information and systems are available for operation and use when needed to meet the entity's objectives. Think uptime, network accessibility, ensuring systems are ready when users need them, minimizing disruptions. It's basically about the always-on requirement for many systems.
Makes sense. Crucial for cloud services.
Okay.
CA, then PP. What's the first P?
The first P is for processing integrity. This is all about the quality and reliability of the system's processing. It ensures that system processing is complete, valid, accurate, timely, and authorized.
So does it do what it's supposed to do, correctly and on time?
Exactly. If you input data, you expect the system to process it correctly, consistently, without errors or unauthorized changes. It's like making sure the digital factory floor is running perfectly.
Okay. Processing integrity. What's the second P?
The second P is for privacy. Now, this one is specifically related to personal information. It means that personal information is collected, used, retained, disclosed, and disposed of in conformity with the commitments in the entity's privacy notice, and with criteria set forth in generally accepted privacy principles issued by the AICPA.
Ah, so distinct from confidentiality. Privacy is about personal data, specifically.
Yes, that's a key distinction. Confidentiality can apply to any sensitive information the organization designates. Privacy specifically pertains to information associated with an individual names, addresses, health records, financial details, and the rights individuals have over that data. Think GDPR, CCPA, all those regulations. It covers everything from how your health records are managed to that cookie banner you click.
Right. Very important distinction. Okay, CAPP. What's the S?
And finally, S is for security. This is often seen as the foundational category. It focuses on protecting information and systems against unauthorized access, unauthorized disclosure of information, and damage to systems. Damage that could compromise the availability, integrity, confidentiality, and privacy of information or systems, and affect the entity's ability to meet its objectives.
So security kind of underpins the others.
In many ways, yes. It's about preventing bad things from happening, unauthorized access, data breaches, system damage. It's the overarching protection layer. And it's worth highlighting that the security category, sometimes called the common criteria because it relates to all the others, is addressed in most trust services engagements.
Most. Why not all?
Well, given our huge dependence on technology and the constant cybersecurity threats, security is almost always relevant. But you could, theoretically, have a very specific engagement focused only on, say, availability controls for a disaster recovery service, where maybe the core security controls are handled elsewhere. It's uncommon, but possible. Generally, though, security is the bedrock.
Okay, CAPPS, confidentiality, availability, processing, integrity, privacy, and security. Are these always used together?
No, and that's one of the strengths of the framework, its flexibility. They were designed to be applied individually or in any combination, depending on the service being provided and the user's needs.
So a service provider might just get a SOC 2 report covering security and availability, for example.
Exactly. Or maybe security, availability, and confidentiality. It depends on the commitments they make to their customers and the risks involved. For example, that SOC for cybersecurity engagement we mentioned, that often uses the criteria relevant to security, availability, and confidentiality. And how they're applied also varies slightly with the report type, as we discussed. A Type 1 SOC2 looks at the design against the chosen criteria. A Type 2 SOC2 looks at design and operating effectiveness against those criteria, with test results. SOC3 summarizes the Type 2 findings for general use.
And this isn't just for typical service organizations.
No, the applicability is broad. They can be used for other entities too, like in that SOC for supply chain engagement, where the criteria would be applied to systems involved in making or distributing products. It's a really versatile framework for building trust in many different contexts.
Okay, so we have the Trust Services Criteria, CAI-PPS, as the specific blueprints for trust in systems. But you mentioned they fit into a bigger picture, something called COSO.
Yes, exactly. If the trust services criteria are the specific ingredients, you can think of the COSO framework as the master cookbook that helps organizations put all those ingredients together in a structured, logical, and effective way.
COSO. What does that stand for again?
It stands for the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Treadway Commission. They developed the Internal Control Integrated Framework. And it's not just a framework, it's really the widely accepted benchmark, a true gold standard used by companies all over the world to design, implement, and assess their overall system of internal control.
Okay, so COSO is the big picture for internal control. How does it relate to the trust services criteria specifically?
Well, the AICPA very deliberately aligned the trust services criteria with the COSO framework. They recognized COSO's foundational importance. The COSO framework itself is built on 5 core components, and those components are supported by 17 underlying principles that cover the fundamentals of internal control.
5 components, 17 principles.
Okay. What's really neat is how the trust services criteria, particularly the security or common criteria, map directly onto these 17 COSO principles. They essentially build upon them, adding further detail and specificity, especially around information technology and data processing risks relevant to the COPPS categories.
So COSO provides the general structure, and the trust services criteria add the specific details needed for system and data controls.
It's a great way to put it. COSO gives you that broad, holistic view of internal control and the trust services criteria layer on top, offering a truly comprehensive approach to managing risks related to security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy.
Okay, this sounds important. Can we walk through those 5 COSO components? It feels like understanding them would help understand the foundation of these reports.
Absolutely. It's definitely worthwhile. You'll see how they underpin not just SOC reports, but really any well-run organization.
Right, what's the first component?
The first one is the control environment. This covers COSO principles 1 through 5. It's all about the overall tone and culture of the organization regarding control. Think tone at the top.
Integrity, ethics.
Exactly. It includes the commitment to integrity and ethical values, the board of directors' independence and oversight, management establishing clear structures and reporting lines, the commitment to attract, develop, and retain competent people, and holding individuals accountable for their internal control responsibilities.
So it sets the stage for everything else.
It really does. If the control environment is weak, if leadership doesn't value controls, then even the best specific procedures can fail. It's a foundation.
Okay, control environment. What's number 2?
Number 2 is risk assessment. This aligns with COSO principles 6 through 9. This component is all about identifying and analyzing the risks that could prevent the organization from achieving its objectives.
So figuring out what could go wrong.
Pretty much. It involves clearly specifying objectives first, then identifying risks across the entity related to those objectives. Crucially, it also involves considering the potential for fraud when assessing risks and identifying and assessing changes in the business or external environment that could significantly impact control.
You can't control what you don't understand.
That's the essence of it. Risk assessment is about understanding what you're up against before you try to build defenses.
Makes sense. Component 3.
Component 3 is control activities. This is covered by principles 10 through 12. These are the actual actions established through policies and procedures that help ensure management's directives to mitigate risks are carried out.
So the specific things people do, the procedures.
Exactly. This is where the rubber meets the road. Deploying controls through policies, what's expected, and procedures, how to do it. This includes selecting control activities that mitigate risks to acceptable levels, and, importantly for our discussion, developing general control activities over technology.
Ah, technology controls. That sounds relevant to SOC.
Very relevant. And in fact, the trust services criteria significantly expand on CSO Principle 12, which talks about deploying control activities through policies and procedures by adding 4 supplemental common criteria. These are very specific to the digital and operational aspects we've been discussing.
Okay, what are these supplemental criteria?
There are 4 key ones. First, logical and physical access controls. This is all about how the entity restricts access to systems and data both online and physically. Think strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, role-based access, but also things like locked server rooms, badge access, who gets in, who doesn't, and how is that managed. Second, system operations. This covers how the entity monitors its systems, detects deviations or problems like security incidents or processing errors, and mitigates them. It's about keeping the systems running smoothly and catching glitches or attacks early. Third, change management. This is crucial. It's about how the organization manages changes to its IT environment, software updates, hardware changes, configuration changes. Are changes properly requested, tested, approved, and implemented to prevent unauthorized alterations or disruptions, making sure updates don't break things or create new security holes. And fourth, risk mitigation. This focuses on how the entity manages risks related to potential business disruptions, like disaster recovery and business continuity planning, and also the risks associated with using vendors and other business partners, third-party risk management. It's about having backup plans and managing the risks inherent in outsourcing.
Wow, okay. Those 4 sound like the real practical application of controls in an IT context. Logical physical access, system operations, change management, risk mitigation. Got it. What's the 4th COSO component?
The 4th component is information and communication, covered by principles 13 through 15. This focuses on ensuring the organization obtains or generates and uses relevant, high-quality information to support internal control. It also emphasizes effective internal communication, communicating objectives and responsibilities downwards and across the organization, and effective external communication with stakeholders about matters affecting internal control.
So making sure the right information gets to the right people inside and out.
Precisely. Controls are kind of useless if information isn't flowing effectively and accurately. It's like the nervous system of the control framework.
Okay. And the final component?
The fifth and final component is monitoring activities, corresponding to COSO principles 16 and 17. This component is about evaluating whether the controls are actually present and functioning over time. This can be done through ongoing monitoring activities built into processes, separate evaluations like internal audits or SOC exams, or a combination.
Checking if things are still working.
Exactly. And crucially, it also includes evaluating and communicating any identified internal control deficiencies in a timely manner to the people who can fix them, including senior management and the board. It's about ensuring controls stay effective and adapting when they don't. Continuous improvement.
Okay, control environment, risk assessment, control activities with those IT-specific additions,
Okay.
information and communication, and monitoring. That really provides a solid structure.
It does. And just to summarize that overall alignment again, the trust services criteria consist of those common criteria, which map closely to COSO principles, especially security and the supplemental 4, and then additional category-specific criteria for availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy, which we can dig into next. COSO provides that broad, essential framework, and the trust services criteria add the specific, detailed requirements for information and system controls within that structure. It's a really well-integrated approach.
All right, so we've got the big picture with COSO and the main COPPS categories. You mentioned there are also additional specific criteria for some of those categories: availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy.
That's right. Beyond the common criteria that apply broadly, mostly related to security and the COSO principles, there are additional sets of criteria that drill down into the specific requirements for achieving objectives related to A, PI, C, and P.
Okay, let's zoom in on those. They sound like where the really specific controls live. Where should we start?
Let's start with the additional criteria for availability, which are known as the A series. These criteria, logically enough, focus intensely on ensuring the continuous availability of the system for the user entity. It's not just about the system being on, but being reliably accessible and functional when needed.
So, preventing downtime and ensuring access. What kind of things do they cover specifically?
They get pretty granular, for example. A1.1 deals with maintaining, monitoring, and evaluating current processing capacity and use, and planning for future capacity needs. Basically, making sure they have enough server power, bandwidth, etc., now and for expected growth. A1.2 is about disaster recovery and business continuity. It covers identifying environmental threats like power outages, floods, cyber attacks, designing detection and protection measures, how they respond to incidents, data backup procedures, secure offsite storage, having alternate processing infrastructure, and ensuring data can actually be recovered. A1.3 specifically requires testing the recovery plan procedures periodically to make sure they actually work. It's no good having a plan if you've never tested it under pressure.
Right. A plan on paper isn't much help in a real disaster. So availability is really about resilience and recovery.
Exactly. It's about ensuring systems are there for you even when bad things happen, by being proactive about capacity, threats, and having robust, tested recovery plans.
Okay, availability, a series. What about processing integrity, the PI series?
Right, the additional criteria for processing integrity PI series.
Yeah.
These criteria are all about the quality and reliability of the information and the system processing itself, ensuring that products or services are delivered based on complete, accurate, timely, and authorized processing.
Making sure the digital factory runs perfectly, like you said before. What specifics are in the PI series?
It covers the whole processing lifecycle. PI 1.1 focuses on obtaining or generating relevant quality information to support the processing objectives. Garbage in, garbage out. So this is about quality inputs. PI 1.2 requires policies and procedures over system inputs, including authorization, completeness, and accuracy checks before data even enters processing. PI 1.3 covers policies and procedures over the actual system processing the calculations, transformations, logic to ensure it meets specifications. PI 1.4 deals with policies and procedures for delivering system outputs completely, accurately, and timely, getting the results out correctly. And PI 1.5 covers policies and procedures for storing inputs, processed items, and outputs completely, accurately, and timely. Secure and correct storage throughout.
Okay, so PI is really about data accuracy and process reliability from beginning to end. Input, processing, output, storage.
Precisely, ensuring every step is correct and reliable.
Got it. Next up, confidentiality, the C series.
Yes, the additional criteria for confidentiality, C series. These relate specifically to how confidential information, remember, that's information designated as sensitive by the entity, beyond just personal data, is handled appropriately throughout its life cycle.
Protecting secrets. What do the C-Series criteria cover?
There are two main ones here. C1.1 is about identifying and maintaining confidential information. This involves classifying data as confidential, applying appropriate safeguards like encryption, access controls, and ensuring it's only available to authorized individuals or systems. Think trade secrets, M&A plans, sensitive R&D data. C1.2 focuses on the disposal of confidential information. When it's no longer needed, how is it securely destroyed? This isn't just hitting delete. It means secure wiping of drives, physical shredding, ensuring decommissioned hardware doesn't leak data, making sure it's truly gone.
Right, because deleted doesn't always mean gone. So C is about identifying, protecting, and securely destroying sensitive non-public information.
Exactly, protecting business secrets.
Okay. And finally, privacy. The P-Series, you said this was comprehensive?
It is. The additional criteria for privacy, P-Series, are dedicated entirely to the handling of personal information. Because of the specific rights individuals have over their data and the various regulations, this category is much more detailed than confidentiality.
Covering everything from cookie banners to health records, you mentioned.
Yeah, it's very broad. It aims to ensure personal information is collected, used, retained, disclosed, and disposed of properly, respecting individual privacy rights and complying with the organization's own privacy commitments and relevant laws.
What kind of specific areas do the P-Series criteria cover?
It's quite extensive, reflecting the complexity of privacy. The main groupings are P1.0. Notice and communication of objectives related to privacy, basically. Transparency. Telling people what you collect and why. P2.0. Choice and consent giving individuals control over their data collection and use. Opt-in, opt-out mechanisms. P3.0. Collection ensuring data collection is limited to the stated purposes. P4.0. Use, retention, and disposal governing how data is used internally, how long it's kept, and how it's securely deleted. P5.0. Access allowing individuals to access, review, and correct their personal information. P6.0. Disclosure and notification rules around sharing data with third parties and notifying individuals of breaches or important changes. P7.0. Quality maintaining the accuracy, completeness, and relevance of personal information. P8.0. Monitoring and enforcement ensuring the organization monitors compliance with its privacy policies and has mechanisms to address complaints and enforce policies.
Wow, that is comprehensive. Notice consent, collection, use, access, disclosure, quality enforcement. It really covers the entire life cycle of personal data responsibly.
It does. It essentially provides a robust framework for responsible data stewardship, which is increasingly critical in today's world.
Hashtag outro.
Wow. Okay. What a journey we've been on today. Seriously, we started by getting our heads around the whole landscape of outsourcing, user entities, service organizations, why that relationship makes SOC reports so essential.
Setting the stage.
Then we really unpacked the core SOC engagements. SOC 1 for financial reporting controls, SOC 2 diving deep into those trust services criteria, CFPPS for specified parties, and SOC 3 providing that general use summary of trust.
Right, the what and for whom.
And we clarified that absolutely vital distinction between Type 1, the snapshot of design, and Type 2, the video showing operating effectiveness over time. Huge difference.
Crucial difference, yeah.
Then we explored the CAPPS framework itself. Confidentiality, availability, processing integrity, privacy, security, the blueprints for digital trust. And we saw how beautifully they align with the broader COSO internal control framework, that sort of master cookbook.
Foundation, yeah. Including that deep dive into the COSO components and those specific additional criteria for availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and, wow, especially privacy.
We covered a lot of ground, but it's clear, I hope, that while these reports might seem, a bit complex or technical from the outside, they are truly crucial tools. They empower organizations, the user entities, to make really informed decisions about the services they rely on. They help manage risk effectively. And fundamentally, they help build and maintain that essential trust in our increasingly interconnected and digitally dependent world. They provide the necessary assurance, the proof that service organizations are operating with robust controls, holding them accountable for the integrity, the security, the availability of the services they provide. Really, you could say these reports are a cornerstone of confidence in the digital economy. They help ensure those hidden gears of our digital lives are turning smoothly and, importantly, securely.
Absolutely. So, a final thought for everyone listening. Now that you have a much better handle on the intricacies of SOC reports, next time you sign up for a new online service, or maybe your own company is thinking about outsourcing a function, what questions might you ask now about the assurances they provide?
Good question.
How does knowing about SOC 1, 2, 3, Type 1, Type 2, and the trust service criteria change your perspective on digital trust and all those unseen processes just keeping our world running? Keep asking those questions, keep digging deeper, and definitely keep that curiosity alive. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.